from your analysis, did this 35-page State of the Nation really represent a bigger input in terms of the developmental challenges we face? Or was it simply just the same rhetoric and political monologue that we've been seeing from the get-go administration for the past 8 years?
Thanks, Max, my former student, and I think he had a hand in extending this invitation. And I couldn't refuse. We are running out of time, so quick reaction. Max, I did not read the State of the Nation address. I did not listen to it quite deliberately. Because we have been told the same things time and again. And of course, I did manage to gather some snippets from social media, and I mean, nothing inspired really. And I think if one takes something, say, from HPP1, Labour Prosperity Plan 1, there was a promise in there of 200,000, 20,000 serviced areas. And I think if you read today's New Era, you would see that the figures, are just way off. I think it's 1,000 something areas that have been delivered. So, if you look at the prosperity plan that is supposedly aimed to accelerate development and deliver prosperity, and the figures just do not add up. You promise one thing and then what is delivered is way off the mark. And those of you also who had the time to read the progress report of HPP1, if you look at pillar number 3 on social progression, the analysis or the evaluations, I don't know who did the evaluation, probably is the presidency itself. But arguably, the success rate on pillar number 3 is about 90%. And pillar number 3 speaks about issues of service delivery, poverty alleviation, reducing maternity and mortal, yes, all this kind of stuff. This the social issues. And your own evaluation says your success rate was more than 90%. That's scandalous. It's criminal. So this is why I'm saying I did not listen to the speech quite deliberately. And the things that came out of the speech, some of them are quite very, what's the word? Insulting. So you heard about the issue of the genocide. Very insensitive, and knowing that the president is where the buck needs to stop. And the president says, I was not even born. I did my part. Who should take responsibility? So let me stop there for now.
Ms. Namistas, let me come to you right now. The president mentioned something very interesting at the start of his speech. He said that the SWAPO administration since 1990 has grown the GDP almost 4 times as much as it was during apartheid. But today we still see that about 46% of Namibians live in multi-dimensional poverty. And that is quite a very scary statistic, just over 2.5 million. And the president further went on in his speech and said that he really intends to reduce these high levels of poverty through advanced social grants and so forth that he started way back at the beginning of his presidency with the introduction, the doubling of the old age pension. Right now we have the almost 5th time increase in the disability grant. So what has been the contradictions in terms of really uplifting many Namibians out of multi-dimensional poverty? If we're talking about 46% of a population of 2.5 million that is living in deep multi-dimensional poverty, is quite a staggering statistic. So did the president speak to this particular statistic? And in what way did it address that we have a deeply unequal society that is unable to address this multidimensional poverty?
Good evening to everybody. I think, as has been said, maybe let me just to answer your question, go a little bit back. I think in his speech, which I just came through, there's achievements. And if we remember, these achievements has been achieved for the past 32 years, the same achievements, which means that we have really not addressed the issues in terms of the priorities that was given to the government during the times of the needs of our people. For example, when they started to call for our trust, we have messaged clearly that we need employment. We need to improve our children's education. We are suffering from poverty, and those have never been put as priorities on the budget that was then, even now. It was never put in as a serious matter through the different ministries. So when the president reports, I think he has not even really, it is maybe just to brainwash. I think and that's not good for the younger Namibians to start to analyze what you are being told, that it is just not truth. That it was just maybe to feel good, because the Honorable Benani clearly said where we stand. And for many years, I'm tired really that we are standing number 3 on the barometer, we are here number 1, we are not standing anywhere. We are 0. Because the question of what the government, what the president has said is not true when we look in reality. I spent my time at Marienthal at the rubbish dump on the 21st of March, and painfully with young Namibians who live off the dump. And I'm told that the other Namibians are standing at the wall of SWAPO to peep in, and then at the end it is, I don't know, is it a breach? We were condemning Mr. Smith many years ago, saying, you give us a breach, but I'm ashamed that today that same is repeated. So we have really not addressed the deepest journey of our Namibians to twist their situation and made sure that we have the dignity and we have the pride. That's why we see this suicide to Namibians. That's why we see these young Namibians who abuse their alcohol and their drugs and whatever. That's why the result that the president was praising himself of doing and changing is not, it's the opposite. And I think the money that we, why is the money, my question is really, why 2023? Why 2025? I mean, and that's observation of our government is, we have a need now. We used to have it already yesterday. My dear brother was saying that I didn't look at the speech. It's really painful. And it is painful for disrespecting, like the introduction and the opening welcoming was expressed. It's painful for those who need to be leading the young ones to observe such a broken land of the brave. You can't take on such a thing. And you have to speak when you are disrespected by your head of state in this manner. You have to tell him, we are not the ones to speak in this panel. You have to write on the pieces of the poverty, on the pieces of the economy, on the pieces of the delta, on the oil. You have to write. Every day your opinion must appear so that they can see you are not a fool. Because the poverty issue is not the only one. The health, we have not rise only from COVID. COVID, what I thought it was, the president should have started us after these 2 years. Starting us and saying, this is my experience, this is how we're going to start. But he doesn't jumpstart us, he pulls us totally in the four walls of, I don't know what dark hole he wants to go with. And I'm really very sad about that. And I'm calling on the Namibians, young ones for that matter, to become woke. You are being taken for granted. Woke and be the revolutionaries that we need. Just woke.
Thank you very much, Ms. Namises, for that comprehensive answer you gave. And it is very good that you brought in the aspect of youth at the end of your response there. This is where I want to bring in my brother, Cindy Somoyo. The question that perhaps the majority of this congregation here, if I may refer to that, sitting here today wants to hear is the aspect of youth and the number of challenges that we as young people are facing. The President mentioned a number of interventions for young people yesterday in the State of the Nation address to break down the unemployment numbers and so forth. He mentioned issues such as the Environmental Investment Fund, the work integrated learning. He touched on issues of NASFA, of bringing an amnesty for about 12 months. In your comprehensive and overview analysis, do you think these interventions were enough to really arrest the issues that are facing the youth of this country? Honorable Velani, in his State of the Nation address, just correctly mentioned that our youngest member of parliament last year, raised a very important motion which called on government to act and declare state of emergency on youth unemployment. Based on that background, do you think the president really gave a fitting response to that motion in his State of the Nation address, or did he just really tell the situation?
First and foremost, when we look at the issues of young people, we need to stop looking at the issues of young people as if we are a homogeneous group. That's the first problem, right? We are a multidimensional group facing multidimensional problems. So first and foremost, we need to separate young people in terms of we have in-school young people, right? Young people who have qualifications, young people who have degrees. We have young people that have been left out, who dropped out of school, they do not have qualifications, and henceforth they are being left out from this current economic structure. So those are the two things we need to look at. And I think the president in his speech did not look at young people in that particular manner. He looked at young people as this homogeneous group, this is what we're going to do. And that in itself for me is wrong. Firstly, when it comes to NESPA, the problem already in itself is an amnesty for 12 months does nothing. Because it miraculously believes that after those 12 months, young people will have a job and they'll be able to eat. In itself does nothing. So an amnesty that comes with an action plan in terms of improving unemployment, then that helps. Because at the end of the day, even after those 12 months, we're still going to have the same problem that young people are not miraculously after those 12 months not going to have jobs. But also, as Honorable Velani said, that even for young people that work in government, if your salary has not increased in the past 7 years, so what kind of job are they going to get that miraculously makes them able to pay for their NESFA growth, makes them able to take care of themselves, makes them able to take care of their families? That already became a misjudgment. So I don't think that intervention in itself will actually help in the long run. In terms of internships and so forth, I think we need to come to a realization that first and foremost we have a problem with the higher education system. So in most developed countries, internship component is a component that comes already within your studies, not after your studies are done. The reason why that is done is so that people can have at least industry experience by the time they are done with their studies. Basically, we are putting young people 10 steps backward by requiring you first and foremost to get an internship after you're done with your studies, and then afterwards you look for a job. That already then becomes a problem. But also, it becomes a problem because you also still have places, whether it's not even universal, to say that people are not going to ask for industry experience. It's not a universal thing. So if you are going to look for work in the private sector, they're going to ask you for 3 years, 5 years experience. Where did you get that from? Right? So already those are the issues that already exist. Now those issues are not being addressed. But also, 2% in internship positions in government. Guys, let's be serious. Like, if we're saying there are over 50% of young people that are looking for jobs, 2% does nothing. It's not even a dent. It's not even a dent. But also, if we are saying something is going to happen, these things need to be followed by budgets. Need to be followed in terms of, if we are saying we want to deal with unemployment, first and foremost, we need to do away with these things of unpaid internships. It is slave labor, modern day slave labor. It does nothing for young people. It actually puts them backward. So at the end of the day, we will need to know, even for this 2%, what is the budget? How much are they going to get paid? Not a measly $1,000 Namibian dollars that is just taxi money for the month. That does nothing for my food, does nothing for my survival. Especially for young people, a lot of young people who either come from single-headed households or come from families that are already suffering by themselves. And it does nothing if I'm doing my internship in Window, that does nothing for my rent. Where am I going to live? So all of these things need to be issues that are addressed. So at the end of the day, I think in terms of the scholarship for green hydrogen, I think it's a very brilliant idea. Yes, young people should get scholarships for green hydrogen, for things, for jobs of the future. That is very much important. But it will be very much important for us as people to be able to keep government accountable on that particular promise. Because at the end of the day, it will just sound like a lot of sounding nothings with no actionable plans.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moyo, for that really comprehensive response on the issues that we as youth are facing in this country. Dr. Shirera, I want to bring you in on this point. It has become clear over the past year, and also during his State of the Nation this year, that the GAINCOP presidency is relying on particularly the green hydrogen project to be his sort of legacy. You would remember that in 2015, President Pohamba was also relying on TPEC and the Mass Housing Project to be sort of his leaving the office legacy. The same is now happening with President GAINCOP with the green hydrogen project. And the government has really extensively gone in terms of consulting. We are seeing miraculously so from the SWAPO government that they're inviting leaders of opposition one by one to sort of sell this idea of the green hydrogen project, which shows to you, demonstrates how important this really is for the GAINCOP presidency. In fact, the Minister of Mines yesterday said that, or the other day before, he said there are going to be 32,000 jobs created from the green hydrogen project, which is almost the population of Arthur region. He further said that Namibia is going to be energy sufficient, 100% energy sufficient, and in fact we are also going to be able to export energy to other southern countries. We have had these promises on a large scale in the past from the SWAPO government. So really take us into confidence whether we can trust this intervention by government in terms of the green hydrogen project. Can we really say that this time we've hit a gold mine and the SWAPO government is going to run a comprehensive program that is really going to uplift thousands of Namibians from poverty and bring much needed jobs? Dr. Sigari.
Thank you, Max. I think you're asking me to be a prophet here. I'm not going to do that. I think it's definitely way too early to tell for a start. But green hydrogen is really the in thing. And you see the interest that comes from international investors and the like, that it's the energy of the future. It speaks to UN development goals of not harming the environment and all this kind of stuff. So it's something that is in vogue, as it were. And of course, it is bound to elicit a lot of interest, hope among the citizens. But when it comes to numbers, that's another kettle of fish. It's another ball game altogether. And we are not really going to be able to tell at this point. But I think the noises that we are getting are probably the correct noises. We need to be energy sufficient, no question about that. But I don't know, Max, one reason or the other, if I can abuse the mic, is as if we are discussing more about the SONA rather than the real SONA address that was given by Mr. Venani. So if you may allow, I would like to speak some of the things that were also raised by Mr. Venani, and perhaps try to unpack them and put them in a context. And I will just speak on a few. One is the issue of multinational companies and how they milk this country, and how we do not derive a lot of benefits from our natural resources. There is something in Marxist sociology called corporate bourgeoisie. Corporate bourgeoisie is a particular kind of class that facilitates the exploitation, if you like, of a particular country through the locals, to benefit the multinational companies. So the people who would, for example, push the narrative that we do not own oil, their pockets are in line already. Okay? So for as long as you have got that class called corporate bourgeoisie, which is a conduit between multinational capital and various kind of post-colonial economies, forget about deriving real value from your natural resources. Our economy is largely an extractive economy, which not beneficiate, which not add value. Again, that's a problem, a serious one. And we have been talking about value addition for more than, I don't know how many years. Every time we just talk about value, but it doesn't happen. And toothpicks, by the way, come from China. If you go to any restaurant, take that little package in which the toothpicks are. You will see a note they're made in China. And then you ask yourself, for heaven's sake, do we have enough trees? Or some wood that we can. It's ridiculous, but to me it sounds so, as if I'm mocking this, but it tells us something about the state of affairs. If you can, we put together some toothpicks. Yeah? What Nani also spoke about the issue of agriculture, very important. And the late Bugenabe, Thomas Sankara once said, "He who feeds you controls you." He who feeds you controls you. Now, if you are unable to feed your own people, forget about it. You have got the Zambezi region that receives above average rainfall every year. Why don't we make that an agricultural hub that feeds the entire nation? So, as a good friend of mine always say, our problems are really manufactured. Our problems are manufactured. No other explanation. Rubenani also spoke about us being a begging nation, and I think he couldn't put it any better. Hit the nail on the head. You hear our president going to the UN General Assembly saying to the World Bank and to the IMF, please relook this middle income category because it doesn't allow us to access loans. For heaven's sake. You go to the UN, you are asking these Bretton Woods institutions to really look your income category. Because the middle income doesn't allow you to pay this particular kind of funds. But the fundamental problem is that the country is extremely unequal. So it's not that there is not enough wealth in this country. It's an issue of distribution, right? So we don't need to go to the UN and beg World Bank to reclassify us such that the country is already indebted, I would say. We're talking about what now? Probably about 70% ratio. 75. So for every, say, $10 that this country produces, $7.50 is not ours. Well, to put it in layman's language. Let me stop there before I...
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Mr. Shivera, the camel phone I have collected, they are the best toothpicks, the camel phone. And I think the people can do toothpicks with the camel phone. They are freely available, and there are hundreds and thousands on our road. So, young people, there is a project waiting for you to explore. I think what I want to also say is, in the address that Honorable Benani put to us today, we picked up that there is a bit of contradiction from the yesterday one. And I was wondering, sitting there, why is these two things of the same country so different? Why? Who's carrying the heart and who's carrying the tummy? But I want to leave it there. Who carries the heart and who carries the tummy? But I want to also just say that I think it was one of the provocative and threatening to the other one provoking, this one provoking, the other one very threatening. And I think in enlightenment that I picked up there is where I hear the whole question of the bullying tactic. And I think labeling also is a very bad leadership, and trying to put the situation under the carpet while the house is really burning. So for me, I think, I can applaud and say I'm happy about the increment, but when I hear the analysis coming from today's SONA, I really want to rethink that we must not be put butter in the mouth and remain quiet while it's melting. So I think be vigilant and being already in advance. I think, how can we be caught not being so vigilant? How can we every year, every time be taken back? We were called upon to really look at today's address as well and become vigilant and stand aside. I think the last one is on the genocide. I think, yes, you address the genocide, but I want us to also not do it like we have done it in the past, only talking about women and children and sidestepping our men. Because all of us have a role to play. So let us not keep our talk to the Namas and the Hereros only, while the rest of the Nikwen are staying outside. Because that shows that we are falling in the hands of those who are the very creators of the atrocities. And I think the Germans are laughing at us when we do that. And when we could extend, and then the learned people can do that, extend the genocide to its origin, where the land, like now when the resources and the wealth are taken, extend it, go backward, and look at the origin of resource plundering, resource taking genocide has already started there and it's continuing to this day. So let us be very inclusive and not like my honorable president saying, I'm inclusive and at the meantime, I'm playing the game of seclusion. So let us not do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. So I think what I'm going to do is do a reflection in terms of the points I took down from Honorable Venani's speech. And so firstly, I think we are about 8 years away from 2030, right? So meaning Vision 2030 and Sustainable Development Goals. So if I were to look or reflect from Honorable Venani's speech, so firstly, we are doing a few misfirings in the country. So there's a lot of talk about COVID and gains made from COVID. Problem number one, there is no talk in terms of gains from COVID, in terms of how we are going to bolster our healthcare system. We have a healthcare system that is faltering. There are no talks in terms of how to bolster it. But also, one thing that COVID has taught us is first and foremost, we do not make our medicines. Number two, we don't make our own vaccines. That's why we have vaccine hesitancy. Is there a plan from government? Is there an idea from government on how to bolster our capacity when it comes to those issues? We have had nothing in terms of that. And that for me is very saddening, especially if we're talking about industrialization and being able to get to the level of industrialized countries by 2030. Poverty. The economy is growing at 2.2, 2.3. That also is very sad because according to actual statistics, in order for us to be able to get people out of poverty, we need to grow economically over 7% annually. We are not anywhere near 7%. And there is no tangible, actionable plan on how to get the economy to even grow by 5%. We did not hear that in yesterday's State of the Nation address, and there is no plan from government that we've had with regarding to that. So that in itself becomes a problem. So I don't think even in terms of reaching the goal number 4 of the United Nations of reducing poverty, we are going to be able to reach it at this particular point. But also, when we look at, even in terms of just development in itself, and talking about how we've been able to defeat poverty. So first and foremost, anyone who knows in terms of how you measure development in terms of 2 things. Firstly, in terms of economic development, which is GDP per capita. But the other thing is human development. Human development is in a very dire state, right? So if we're going to measure human development, we need to look at, have we been able to increase the living standards of people, or the living standards of people been able to do that? The statistics already show us we have a lot of young people that are living in poverty. The unemployment amongst young people and even amongst a lot of Namibians is going up. We have 1.6 million Namibians that are living in poverty. That means already their living standard of Namibians is not going up. There was also a publication that came out in the Namibian that a lot of Namibians are living in debt. So we are not doing anything to technically reduce or increase the living standards of Namibians. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of sounding nothing about reduction of poverty. But in terms of the ground, the living standards of Namibians, there are a lot of Namibians still living in shanty towns today. But the promise of removing or reducing shanty towns came already from Harare Prosperity Plan 1. There was a promise about reducing pit latrines and all of that. All of those things have not been done. So at the end of the day, it's very nice to say this has been done, this has not been done. But actionably, on the ground, the living standards of people are not moving. But also just lastly, we can't say that we have also reduced living standards of people if we are still dilly-dallying about discussions on a basic income grant and who should get the basic income grant. Because at the end of the day, even if you give 40,000 people a basic income grant, it does nothing, right, to dent the poverty. Because as the numbers will say, 1.6 million, 40,000 is nothing in terms of 1.6 million. So at the end of the day, and the last thing I would say is, there's nothing that is being done or being said in terms of, as Honorable Venani said, mechanization of agriculture. There's nothing that is being said in terms of bolstering ourselves from light manufacturing, because we do a lot of light manufacturing in the country. But what drives industry is heavy manufacturing. There are no plans in terms of how to get Namibia to be a heavy manufacturing industrial country. And all of this could be done in terms of beneficiation and value addition of resources, but that is not being done. There are no plans in terms of value addition for uranium, value addition for gold, value addition for diamonds, value addition even for the current oil that has been found. So at the end of the day, I think the house is imploding, and we're just sitting quietly, just looking at it implode, and eventually we are going to find ourselves in a Zimbabwe situation where it explodes outward.
Well, thank you very much. This was a very productive panel in a very short period of time. I'm sure we had more time. We have comprehensively dealt with more issues. Thank you very much, Dr. Silera, Ms. Namasis, and Mr. Moyo. That concludes this panel.